It's small, light in the hand, and today, nearly forgotten. Yet, once upon a time, this little circle of aluminium bronze passed through the fingers of millions of people. It jingled in pockets, rattled in cash drawers, and slid across counters in bakeries, cafes, and corner shops. This is the Liberty 5 Centimes, coin of 1996, one of the final breaths of the French franc, before a new currency swept it away forever. On the surface, it was just 5 centimes, hardly enough for a stick of gum. But in its design, in its metal, and in the year it was struck, lies a story that reaches back centuries, through revolutions, wars, and ideals that shaped an entire nation. The coin in your hand. Imagine holding it in your palm. On one side, the face of Marianne, the embodiment of liberty, reason, and the French Republic itself, her gaze steady, crowned with the Phrygian cap, a symbol inherited from the French Revolution. On the other side, the words Libet, Egalite, Fraternite, the nation's motto, encircle a delicate wreath of wheat and oak, leave symbols of prosperity and strength. The date, 1996. By then, France was on the brink of change. Just 6 years later, the franc would disappear, replaced by the euro. For the 5 centimes coin, it would be the end of a journey that had lasted over a century. More than pocket change. A coin like this is easy to overlook. Its value was small. In the 1990s, 5 centimes was just 1/20th of a franc. You'd need 20 of them to make 1 franc, and about 6.5 francs for a single US dollar. But coins are not merely about their monetary worth, they're cultural artifacts. They capture the politics, the art, and the aspirations of their time. The 5 centimes of 1996 was no exception. France in transition. The France of 1996 was a nation both proud of its past and looking cautiously toward the future. Politically, President Jacques Chirac had been in office for just a year, having campaigned on reducing the social fracture, the growing divide between rich and poor. Economically, France was recovering from the recession of the early 1990s, but unemployment remained high. And across Europe, a great monetary experiment was in motion, the creation of a single currency, the euro. The Maastricht Treaty, signed in 1992, had already set the stage for economic integration. In just a few years, the French franc, a currency with roots going back to the Middle Ages, would cease to exist in everyday life. But in 1996, as coins like this one rolled out of the Monnaie de Paris mint, the franc still reigned in the wallets and minds of the French people. The symbolism of Marianne. To understand the Liberty 5 centimes of 1996, we must first step into its world. France in the mid-1990s, a nation proud of its heritage, yet grappling with the challenges of a new era, a time when the franc was still king. But the winds of change were blowing from Brussels, Strasbourg, and the very heart of Europe. In 1995, Jacques Chirac became the 22nd president of France, a veteran politician. Chirac's campaign focused on what he called la fracture sociale, the social divide between the privileged and those left behind. He promised job creation, social justice, and a stronger economy. But the reality of governance quickly tested those promises. Economic reform was slow. Public sector strikes disrupted daily life, and debates raged over France's role in a rapidly integrating European Union. The franc remained a powerful national symbol, but the Maastricht Treaty, ratified just 3 years earlier, had already set the course toward replacing it with a common European currency. France in 1996 was a modern industrial nation, but it faced challenges. The early 1990s recession had left scars. Unemployment hovered around 12%, particularly affecting young people. Inflation was low, which meant the franc held its value. But wage growth was slow. The average monthly salary was around 11,000 francs, roughly $2,200 at the time. In this economic climate, coins like the 5 centimes had little purchasing power. 20 of them made 1 franc. A franc could buy you a newspaper or a baguette. 5 centimes, however, might only shave a tiny amount off a larger bill, or, in rural markets, tip the scale just enough to make the price even. Yet these coins remained essential for exact change. ensuring the smooth flow of daily commerce. Culturally, the 1990s in France were vibrant. French cinema was thriving, with films like La Haine, 1995, sparking national conversation about race, youth, and the suburbs. Music was evolving, from the global reach of Daft Punk's electronic beats to the enduring charm of chanson. French cuisine remained a point of pride, and café culture was alive and well, with customers paying for their espresso in francs and centimes. In every café, in every boulangerie, the Liberty 5 centimes coin was part of this rhythm, a small piece of metal connecting the customer, the cashier, and the nation's centuries-old currency system. While everyday life continued, the European project was gaining momentum. The Maastricht Treaty had set a bold goal: a single currency to unite member states, economically and politically. For France, this meant that the franc, a currency in use, in some form, since the 14th century, would be phased out in favor of the euro. Supperists saw the euro as a symbol of unity, a way to strengthen Europe's place in the global economy. Critics feared it would erode national sovereignty, diluting the cultural and historical identity tied to national currencies. The Liberty 5 centimes coin, minted in 1996, was born into this debate, a coin whose very existence was marked by an approaching end. Technologically, France in the 1990s was a mix of old and new. The Minitel, a pre-internet online service unique to France, was still in widespread use. Mobile phones were becoming more common, though still expensive. The internet was just beginning to enter homes and offices, promising to reshape communication, business, and even banking. Yet for most transactions, cash remained king. Coins like the 5 centimes were indispensable, especially in small shops and markets where credit cards were rare. Even in an era of growing digital possibility, these little discs of metal were the lifeblood of everyday commerce. It's easy to underestimate the value of 5 centimes. In 1996, it might have been the extra change you needed to round up a bus fare, or the small amount added to a purchase to avoid breaking a larger coin or note. In rural towns, a handful of 5 centimes could pay for a few minutes on a public phone. In cities, they could unlock a supermarket trolley. Their role was subtle but constant. You rarely noticed them, until you didn't have one and the shopkeeper gave you a handful in return. Before we can understand the Liberty 5 centimes of 1996, we must look far beyond the cafes and market stalls of modern France, to a time when knights rode through cobblestone streets, monarchs ruled with divine right, and the first franc was minted. The story begins in 1360, during the 100 Years' War between France and England. King John II, known as John the Good, had been captured by the English and held for ransom. The ransom price was enormous, 3 million gold écus. To raise this staggering sum, France minted a new gold coin, known as the franc à cheval. The coin bore the image of the king on horseback, hence its name. The word franc comes from the Latin francorum rex, meaning king of the Franks, which appeared on the coin. This was the first time the term franc entered French monetary history. Over the centuries, the franc evolved. Under monarchs, its value shifted, gold giving way to silver in many cases. But it was during the French Revolution in the late 18th century that the franc became a true national currency. In 1795, the revolutionary government introduced the franc as the official unit of currency, replacing the livre tournois. The decimal system was adopted, 1 franc equaling 100 centimes, a radical simplification compared to the old, confusing mixture of livres, sols, and deniers. Under Napoleon Bonaparte, the franc spread beyond France's borders. As the French Empire expanded, so too did its currency, influencing monetary systems in Italy, Belgium, and Switzerland. Even after Napoleon's fall, many nations retained the decimal structure he had championed. By the mid-19th century, France spearheaded the creation of the Latin Monetary Union, a coalition of countries, agreeing to standardize their coins in weight, metal content, and value. France, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, and later Greece joined the system, allowing coins to circulate freely across borders. The franc became more than just a national currency. It was part of a shared European monetary framework long before the euro was even imagined. The 20th century brought turbulence. During World War I, the franc lost value as France borrowed heavily to finance the war. The interwar years saw attempts at stabilization, but the Great Depression and political instability weighed heavily on the economy. During World War II, the franc was pegged to the German Reichsmark during the occupation, eroding public trust. After liberation, the franc was re-established, but post-war inflation continued to diminish its value. In 1960, under President Charles de Gaulle, France introduced the new franc, or franc laured, worth 100, of the old francs. This was a revaluation meant to restore confidence and simplify accounting. The new franc retained the subunit of centimes, and coins such as the 5 centimes returned to circulation in this modernized form. From this point forward, when we speak of the 5 centimes coin of 1996, we are talking about the subdivision of the new franc, introduced in 1960, a coin designed to meet the needs of a stable, industrialized economy. The 5 centimes denomination was small but persistent. It had been made in bronze, nickel brass, and eventually aluminium bronze, depending on the era. Though its purchasing power shrank over time, it remained a staple of daily transactions, the kind of coin that quietly kept commerce flowing. By the 1990s, the design featuring Marianne on the obverse and a wreath on the reverse had become a familiar sight, uniting generations of French citizens in a shared visual memory of their money. By the time the Liberty 5 centimes of 1996 was struck, the franc was nearing the end of a journey that had lasted more than 600 years. From medieval gold coinage to modern aluminium bronze pieces, the franc had seen monarchies rise and fall, revolutions shake the nation, and wars redraw borders. It had been both a symbol of national pride and a tool of everyday life. And the 5 centimes coin, small, humble, and often overlooked, carried all that history in the palm of your hand. A coin is more than metal and numbers. It is a miniature canvas, a nation's values, history, and aspirations condensed into a circle small enough to fit between your fingertips. The Liberty 5 centimes coin of 1996 was no exception. Every curve, every line, every letter on its surface tells a story. On the obverse, we meet Marianne, the embodiment of the French Republic. She gazes toward the future, her features calm yet resolute, crowned with the Phrygian cap, an ancient symbol of liberty. This is not an arbitrary choice. Marianne has been appearing on French currency since the mid-19th century, representing the Republic's enduring ideals: liberty, equality, fraternity. Her origins trace back to the French Revolution, when the young republic sought a human face to symbolize its break from monarchy. Over time, her image evolved, sometimes fierce, sometimes serene, reflecting the mood of the nation. On the 5 centimes coin, she appears in a neoclassical style, dignified, elegant, timeless. The design of Marianne on this coin is the work of Henri Lagrafal, a French sculptor and medalist born in 1907. Lagrafal was renowned for his ability to blend classical beauty with modern sensibilities. His Marianne is not an abstraction. She is human, relatable, yet idealized enough to represent a whole people. Lagrafal's design first appeared on smaller French coins in the 1960s, but it endured for decades, becoming one of the most recognized depictions of Marianne in modern France. On the reverse, surrounding the central wreath, are 3 words that have shaped French political identity for over 2 centuries: libert, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, brotherhood. This motto, born during the Revolution, encapsulates the core values of the Republic. Its inclusion on currency serves as a daily reminder. Every time a coin changes hands, it carries not just value, but ideals. At the heart of the reverse design is a delicate wreath, composed of wheat stalks and oak leaves. These are not mere decorations. Wheat has long been a symbol of prosperity, abundance, and the sustenance of the French people. Oak, on the other hand, represents strength, endurance, and longevity. Together, they balance nourishment and stability, a subtle visual metaphor for a healthy, enduring nation. Beneath the wreath lies the denomination, 5 centimes. It is a small value, but its presence in everyday transactions made it an essential unit of currency. Just above, the date 1996 is engraved, a timestamp anchoring this coin to a very specific moment in French history. For numismatists, the date can reveal political and economic contexts. In 1996, France was still fully using the franc, but the countdown to the euro had already begun. This makes the 1996 issue part of the final chapter in the franc story. Like a painter signing their canvas, coin engravers leave a discreet mark. On the Liberty 5 centimes, you will find the name Lagrafal and the reverse designer's name, Adrien de Udon, subtly integrated into the design. These signatures are easy to miss, but they ensure that the artist's contributions are remembered. The coin's material is aluminium bronze, a blend of copper and aluminium, with a touch of nickel. This alloy offers a golden color, resistance to corrosion, and a relatively low weight. The coin measures 19.5 millimeters in diameter and weighs just 3 grams, with a smooth edge that distinguishes it from higher denominations. To the touch, the coin feels warm and light. The raised design elements stand in gentle relief, allowing both sight and touch to identify them. For collectors, these tactile qualities are as much a part of the experience as the visuals. A coin must balance utility and artistry. It must be durable enough for years of handling, yet beautiful enough to represent a nation. The Liberty 5 centimes achieves this balance, its design timeless, its message clear, its role humble yet indispensable. In the grand architecture of the franc, it was a small brick, but one with a carefully crafted face. In 1996, the Monnaie de Paris was in full swing, striking coins for a currency that had served France for centuries. Yet everyone in the building knew a secret. The franc was living on borrowed time. The euro was coming, and every coin they struck would one day be withdrawn, melted, or stored away as a relic. But that did not stop production. In fact, it made the 1996 mintage of the Liberty 5 centimes an essential part of the franc's final. Founded in 864 under King Charles the Bald, the Monnaie de Paris is the oldest continuously operating institution in France. By the 1990s, it had been striking coins for over 1,100 years. Its headquarters stood proudly on the left bank of the Seine, while large-scale production took place in Pessac, near Bordeaux, where modern machinery could meet the demands of millions of coins per year. The 5 centimes coin was made from aluminium bronze, about 92% copper, 6% aluminium, and 2% nickel. This combination was chosen for several reasons. It gave the coin a bright golden tone, made it lightweight, and resisted tarnish even after years in pockets and tills. The metal was delivered to the mint in sheets, from which circular blanks were punched out. These blanks were then annealed, heated to soften the metal, before being cleaned, polished, and prepared for striking. Once the blanks were ready, they were fed into hydraulic presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute. Each press held 2 engraved dies, one for the obverse, featuring Marianne by Henri Lagrafal, and one for the reverse, designed by Adrien de Udon with the wreath and national motto. The pressure was immense, enough to force the metal into every detail of the design, from Marianne's flowing hair to the fine veins in the oak leaves. After striking, each coin was inspected for quality. Those with defects were melted down and recycled. In 1996, approximately 140 million Liberty 5 centimes coins were minted. This was a typical output for the denomination during the late Franc era, ensuring there were enough coins to replace worn pieces and meet the needs of commerce across the country. These coins entered circulation quickly, appearing in shop tills, market stalls, and vending machines within weeks of leaving the mint. Given their low value, they changed hands frequently, wearing down faster than higher denominations. By 1996, the euro transition was no longer a distant theory, it was a planned reality. The timetable called for euro notes and coins to replace national currencies by 2002. So, why keep minting 5 centimes in 1996? The answer is practical. The franc remained legal, tender until the euro's arrival. and the economy still needed small change. Without continued minting, shortages would have caused inconvenience and slowed everyday transactions. The Monnaie de Paris had to maintain supply right up to the very end. Every batch of coins underwent strict quality checks. Inspectors looked for off-center strikes, weak impressions, or blemishes on the surface. Coins that passed inspection were counted, bagged, and sealed in sacks marked with the year and denomination. From there, they were shipped to banks and businesses across France. Security was tight. Although a 5 centimes coin was worth very little individually, millions of them represented substantial value. Transport trucks were guarded, and mint facilities had multiple layers of protection to prevent theft. Once in circulation, the 1996 Liberty 5 centimes blended seamlessly into the everyday flow of money. A baker might hand you 2 or 3 in change for your morning croissant. A market vendor might round a price to the nearest 5 centimes to make calculations simpler. They were so common, so ordinary, that most people never noticed them until they vanished. While most 1996 5 centimes were spent into oblivion, a few were saved in pristine condition. Collectors often acquired rolls directly from banks or mints, preserving them as historical artifacts. Today, these uncirculated examples shine with the golden luster. They had the day they left the press, a reminder of what millions of people once took for granted. But coins are not just about how they are made, they are about how they are used. To truly know the Liberty 5 centimes, we must walk through the streets of France in the 1990s and see what role it played in daily life.